Well, it is my absolute pleasure and joy to welcome you to Central this morning. Glad you are here, and I want to give a shout out to all of our campuses, particularly Glendale. Jim, thank you for sharing that. Made a huge difference in a bunch of people as I've talked to them. Man, you make a difference. So welcome to Glendale and all of our other campuses. Welcome to those of you who are online, whether you're local, somewhere around the state, somewhere around the country, somewhere around the world, wherever you are. We're grateful to have you as well. Okay, so today's the big day. Are we excited? Oh, man. There's two of them right there. Okay, we got to figure this out. All right, you guys need to make a little more noise than that. And again, wherever you are, I want to hear you from here, okay? So I'm just curious. We just got to get a poll. I need to know. How many of you... you got to make noise, okay, like some serious noise. How many of you want to see Kansas City win? Let's just pray for them. I love Kansas City, and this is such. How many of you want to see San Francisco win? Make noise. Oh, that was a little slanted because I kind of gave it away. I like Kansas City. I don't have anything against Kansas City. I like Patrick Mahomes. But I got to tell you, man, I am a Brock Purdy fan. And I just am. And I have been all season. If you don't know, Brock Purdy went to high school right over here at Perry High School. And anyone from Perry? Any students from Perry? Do you have anyone from Perry? Not a soul in the room out over here. There we go. All right. Good for you guys. Anyway, if you know his story, he was drafted last in the NFL draft. He was dubbed Mr. Irrelevant. He was third in the depth chart at San Francisco, and the two guys ahead of him were kind of, the first guy was star, and anyways, he got hurt, second guy got hurt. He got brought in last year and took him all the way to the playoffs, and then this year he has just done phenomenal. But there's this whole, like the whole world seems against him, and I don't know if you know, he is an outspoken believer in Jesus Christ. And he has just come out and told everybody, I'm not about all of this. It is not about the money. It is not about the glitz. It's about serving Jesus. He's taken Luke 9:23 and spoken really boldly about it. And I am a dyed-in-the-wool Brock Purdy fan, and I hope that they win. And because I know exactly what will happen, it's going to be pointed towards Jesus. And for those of you who still pull for Kansas City, may God wash your sins away. I'm kidding. Okay, hey, seriously, wherever you are, man, glad you're here. Love this, the room that I get to be in, and I wish I could be everywhere, but I can't. So here's what we're going to do. I need you to just jump ahead of me here. Just get your Bible, open it up to Genesis chapter 13. We're going to be there in just a few minutes. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I don't usually do this. I'm going to put the big idea out there at the very beginning, and then I'm going to try to show you why this big idea has merit, okay? And every sermon that I ever put together, we kind of have an idea that we're driving at. Here it is for this one, okay? Our destination is determined by the direction we travel, not the intention we declare. Now, that was an idea that I originally heard in an Andy Stanley sermon, and it's not exactly how Andy Stanley said it, but I love the idea of that. You can talk about, well, this is what I want to have, and this is what I hope, and this is, whatever your intentions are, that is not going to matter how it ends up. How it ends up is the road you take and the direction you head. And just as Jim talked about in the kind of opening thing, we're all on a journey, folks, and you're on a journey, I'm on a journey, and your life is headed a certain direction. And when it's all said and done, where you end up, it's because you went the direction you went. Now, I didn't intend to. It's not going to matter. It's the direction you travel, okay? That determines it. So we're continuing in a series today that we started about a month ago. It's called All In Together. We're talking about the fact that as a church, we're asking ourselves, are we doing what we're capable of? Are we fulfilling God's will for us as a church? And I think what the truth is that there's so much more we can do. And I'm challenging us to rise in. I've unashamedly told you this. I'll say it to you again. I am trying my hardest to get 100% participation in this campaign, 100%. there's a couple of things I'm trying to accomplish. Number one is 100% participation, and the rest of it is that we'd understand that we have a calling and a mission, and we have a limited amount of time to get it done, and that's what we're talking about. So, again, I'll be in Genesis in just a moment, but I want to remind you that all throughout this series, what I've been doing is I've been taking the life of Abraham, and I've been showing you different passages, kind of talking about him. The first week, every week was built around one word. The first week's first word was the word legacy, and I talked about legacy. There were two things I would just remind you about legacy, and I'll put them up on the screen. The first is this: your legacy is the difference your life makes to those who come after you. That's your legacy. What difference did you are on the planet, what difference did it make to anyone after you? And it might be very little, it could be absolutely huge. Abraham's legacy was massive, all right? And then I had this idea I put out in that message. Your legacy is not written when you die, it's written every day you live, and when you die, it's saved, like you save a document on a computer. When you die, you're not going to change it, you're not going to revise it, you're not going to correct it, you're not going to edit it, you're not going to embellish it. Your legacy is, this is what it all added up to. That's your legacy. The second week we talked about trust, and the whole that was the key word. Legacy was one, trust was number two. Trust is the idea of overcoming something that is so prevalent in our society and is prevalent among us. It's fear. And I don't know, with all the election stuff and all the stuff in the world, people have learned how to exploit us. We are constantly being manipulated by fear. And we're living so afraid. It's fascinating to me that the most often repeated commandment in the Bible is do not fear. 365 times God says, do not fear, and yet we allow fear to creep in. So the big idea of the second week was only in trusting God can we overcome our fears. That was the week we gave you the coin, and the dollar coin, and I talked about the fact it says, in God we trust on the coin, and I just encourage you to do what I'm doing, which is put it in your pocket or put it on your mirror wherever you'll see it. And every time I reach in my pocket, I feel that coin, and I've carried it since I handed it out. I ask myself the simple question, am I trusting God right now? Am I trusting God right now? It's so easy to say you trust God, and yet it's so hard to actually do. We talked about the tightrope walker across the Niagara Falls and the idea that he challenged himself to push a wheelbarrow and asked people, do you think I could do this with a person in the wheelbarrow? Everybody said yes. He said, I need a volunteer, and nobody stepped in. It's one thing to say you trust in God, it's a whole other thing to trust in God. So that was message 2. Last week we talked about this simple idea that God honors those who honor him. We talked about honor being that this is kind of the baseline. This is how we see ourselves. You honor somebody you put above you, before you. You dishonor people you put below you and beneath you. And the point I was trying to make is we say we honor God, but the truth of the matter is many of us put God down here beneath us and instead of above us. And the point I was driving at last week's message is God deserves to be honored, and because of that, he always deserves our first and our best. Too many of us give him our least and our last. We dishonor him, and then we wonder, why is there a problem between us and God? And for there not to be a problem, you got to honor God. And God honors those who honor him. So the word of today, so legacy, trust, honor, today's word, transformation. Transformation. It's a little bit different kind of a word, but transformation, that's what we're going to talk about. What is transformation? Simply the process of changing. And everybody here is doing it. Everybody there is doing it. We're all changing. You're changing, I'm changing, we're all changing. We're changing all the time. People change, times change. People say you hate change. I hate change. And a lot of people would absolutely agree with it. I hate change. And yet it's inevitable. You cannot live without changing. To live is to change. The cliche, the only person who doesn't mind change is a wet baby. Everybody else. And every time something changes, we get all worked up, we get all upset. Okay, but people change and times change. Things change. It's changing all the time. I was thinking about this a while back. I did a thing with our staff, and I was just thinking about when I was a high school kid. Okay, and so particularly if you're of that age, then I want you to give some thought to this. When I was a high school kid, there were certain things that if you told me that as I get to this stage of my life that would become realities in the United States, there are certain things I would go, you're absolutely crazy. You're absolutely crazy. There's no possible way. And yet today, like I'll give you a couple, okay? And I'm this is not about a morality issue. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about change. It's not a message on morality. It's a message on change. If you would have told me when I was a high school student that you could literally buy pot, you could buy cannabis on the street corners in a drugstore, and I mean literally a drugstore, I would go, you out of your mind. There is no way. I mean, when I was a high school kid, there was nothing more concerning than getting caught having pot, all right? I mean, there's no way it's going to be legalized. If you would have told me when I was a high school student that literally the lottery would be legalized and all across America there'd be these Powerball jackpots, all this billions of dollars, and people would be buying, I go, there's no way, we're not going to legalize. If you would have told me sports betting was going to become legal, and think about like how many dollars are going to be lost on Kansas City today, and it's just mind-blowing to me. If I say it enough times, maybe it'll actually happen. That's what I'm praying for, okay? Go Brock. All right, here we go. If you would have told me that divorce would become as common as it's become, we don't think twice anymore. You meet people, it's like, yeah, this is my third, marriage, whatever. It's just, when I was a high school kid, it's like, there's no way that would happen. We could keep going. That sex outside of marriage would be considered normal, and there'd be this thing called Tinder, and you'd hook up, and we'd have a hookup culture. Not a chance. That pornography would become as ubiquitous. Again, when I was a high school kid, if you're going to see any pornography, you got to go way out of your way, okay? It took some effort. And today, this stuff's, it's hunting you down. If you'd have told me that, I'd have said that's not going to happen. That as a culture, we would embrace homosexuality the way that we've embraced it, and that we would we would legalize same-sex marriage. You go back when I was a high school student, there was no way that was going to happen. If you told me when I was a high school student that boys would be able to enter girls' bathrooms and that we would be having a huge debate over transgenderism, I would go, you are, literally, you're out of your mind. And I can just keep going, but this is the point. This thing is all changing, and it's changing so fast. Swinging. That swinging would become popular and the polyamorous relationships would be moved to the middle more? Not a chance. And if you would have told me on a different front, if you'd have told me when I was a high school student that people would look at churches negatively and that churches in a community could be perceived as negative to some people, when I was a high school kid, there's no chance of that. And even the biggest one of all the things I've just mentioned, if you would have told me that all those things would change, and most Christians really haven't given a whole lot of thought to any of it, I would go, that's not going to happen. Whether it's good, it's moral, it's godly, it's whatever, most of us just go with the flow. And we kind of like whatever. I would never have believed that when I was a high school kid, but here we are. And I'll tell you what really scares me for the future. I told you what's changed in my lifetime. I'm scared for young people for the future. I'm frightened. What is it when they are my age are they going to say, because we got all this now, what are they going to say? In my lifetime, I saw, where's it going? Here's the point, folks. The world we're living in is changing. And again, this is not about morality. This is about change. So I know you've heard this illustration. I'm about 99% positive there's no truth to this illustration whatsoever, other than the image of it works really, really well to convey a point. And that's that story of the frog in the kettle. And the frog in the kettle goes like this. If you want to cook a frog and you put a frog in a pot of cold water, the frog will stay in the water and you can slowly heat the water and you will actually cook the frog, because the frog will not be aware of the environment around it's changing, and it will literally stay in there until it's cooked. As contrasted, if you were to put a frog in a pot of hot water, it would immediately sense the danger and hop out. Now, I don't know, my theory on this, and I've said this every time I use this, I think if there's any truth to this, it was junior high boys that figured it out by doing this to some poor frogs, okay? But since then, adults have tried it, and they found out that's not it. You put a frog in a pot of hot water, and you're going to cook the frog immediately, just like you would a lobster. It's not going to have time to hop out. It's not going to be able to hop out. And the other one, it will sense it and hop out. But the illustration of the environment changing around us so subtly that we don't notice is very, very tangible. It's relatable, all right? We are all changing. I want to read to you Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And this becomes a critical passage to understand if you want to live for Jesus, okay? Romans 12:2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. The idea of conformity is if you were to take your hand and you were to take a glove and you slide the glove over your hand, the glove conforms to the shape of your hand. It's simply a call to those of us who are believers. Do not let the world shove you into its mold. Don't let it shape your life. Don't make it the way you want, all right? So what it's basically saying is, so don't be conformed, but be transformed. Okay, what does that mean? It means to change your mind, to change your thinking. The English word transformed is tied in, and this gets a little complicated, to the Greek transliteration of a Greek word that I know it's confusing, metamorphosis, okay? That comes from a Greek word metamorphou or metaphorsi, or however they specifically developed the word, used the word. But it's the idea, and it's been just taken in its original form into English. To transform is to, it's metamorphosis. When I say metamorphosis, probably an image from, ninth grade biology comes to mind, because there's just a picture of metamorphosis that most of us, we learned when we were a kid and we've held on to it, and it's the picture of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. And we think of metamorphosis as a beautiful thing, and it certainly can be, but it's not always a good thing. It's the process of changing, and we're all changing. And the question is, how are you changing? How are you changing? If you've ever seen somebody after a long season of not seeing somebody, you caught up with them, you haven't seen them for a decade, immediately you cannot help but notice, what are you looking at that's different? And you go, oh my, you might not say it, but you're thinking that you put on a lot of weight. Or you might say, you have lost a lot of weight. Or you might say, you used to have blonde hair, now it's black. Or you might say, you used to have hair, and now you have none. I don't know what you'd say. Your acne cleared up. No, you probably wouldn't say that. But you'd be thinking it. Because what we're doing is we're looking on the outside to see the changes that took place in that person's life over the decade. You know what you're not seeing? You're not seeing the real change. Because the real change isn't on the outside, it's on the inside. Your values have changed. Your goals have changed. Your morals have changed. But here's the point. You won't see that instantly. You will see that only after being exposed and spending some time. You'll see you lost your hair. You won't see you don't have the same morals you used to be. But here's the question I want to ask you. What is happening inside you? Because here's my theory. The changes in your life are internal long before they're external. What's going on inside? And here's the deal. We can hide what's inside, and people don't know, but you know that you're not the person you used to be, or you're not even the person you claim to be. And yet, eventually, time will tell, truth, it will emerge, it's going to come out. It's interesting, the English word, and again, it's taken from the Greek word, so it's a little complicated, but if you look up metamorphosis in a dictionary, a marked change in appearance, character, condition, or function. A marked change. But see, the only one of those that's visible is the appearance. You don't look the same. But has your character changed? Have you become of a different, condition or function? And do people know? Well, now here's the problem, okay? And again, everybody here will relate to this. We're all changing. Which is easier to change? To become a better person or to become a worse person? Is it easier to get better at the way you live life, or is it easier to get worse? And nobody here needs convincing. It's far easier to slide downhill than it is to climb uphill. And the world is trying to change us. It's trying to change me, and it's trying to change you. A dead salmon can easily drift downstream. But if you want to go the other direction, you better be full of life, and you better have a motive. And it's just easy to drift. And so all of us, you're changing. It's going to be easy to change for the worse. It's going to be hard to change for the better. Now, all of that is the setup to the story I want to tell you. It's in Genesis 13. Now, I don't have time to read all the chapter because I did that on Thursday night and I ran out of time. So I just got to tell you what's in Genesis 13, and then I want to show you one particular verse, which I want to show you a pattern of something. In Genesis chapter 13, here's what happens. Well, first off, you got to go to Genesis 12, where God says to Abram, if you will trust me, if you'll get on the journey that I'm going to take you on, if you'll go where I lead you, I'm going to bless your life. And we talked about all of that. It seems incredibly impossible, improbable, not likely to happen, but God says, trust me, and go where I tell you to go. So he does. So he gets up and he's going where God's telling him. Well, what happens in Genesis 13 is he's starting to become very, very prosperous. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. His family's expanded. He's got all kinds of servants with him now. He's got flocks, herds. It's busting it, okay? He's just doing really, really well. Now, he's got a nephew that's kind of hanging out with him, a guy named Lot, L-O-T. And Lot is like going, I'm hanging out with him because, man, God's doing incredible things in his life. I just want to be near him. But what's happening is as Abraham's becoming more and more blessed and wealthy, Lot starts getting blessed and wealthy. In chapter 13, it gets so much that what happens is the people who are taking care of Abraham's flocks start getting in ruckuses with the people who are taking care of Lot's flocks. And there's kind of conflict because there's so much going on, and they're starting to fight with each other. So Abraham comes along and he says, Lot, listen, man, hey, let's just go two different directions. You go one way, I'll go the other. And in fact, he makes this incredible offer to Lot. He says to Lot, hey, man, you can choose anywhere you want, anywhere you want. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. You pick. This incredibly, because it's Abraham being blessed by God, not Lot. He's just in the backdraft of the blessing. And so Lot looks around, and it says that he looks upon literally the green, verdant valley of the Jordan River, the plain. He looks out, and he goes, wow, right there, man. I mean, I want to go where the water is. I want to go where the river is. I want to go down there. And so he chooses the best for himself is what he does. He doesn't say, Abram, I'm only blessed because you're, no, he does what we do. I'm looking out for myself. You give me a choice, I'm choosing that. That's the best. And he sets himself up. He wants to go down there. And then we discover that there's two cities down there that have since become quite famous. One's called Sodom, one's called Gomorrah. And it's down there. And so he just says, hey, see you, man. Bless you. Bye. And he takes his flocks and he heads down. Literally, it's going down. Because that's where the cities are, by the river, at the valley. He goes down there. Now, I want to show you something that one verse I want to point out in chapter 13, and then I want to show you a couple other verses that you'll see a progression. In chapter 13, verse 12, it says this, Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. He lived among the cities of the plain, that's Sodom and Gomorrah, but he pitched his tent near Sodom. He made camp near Sodom. Now I want you to understand, I'm not going in there. I'm not going in Sodom. I know what goes on in Sodom. I don't want anything to do with it. I want the benefit of the culture around the city where everything's happening. And so he made home is what it means. He made his home near. No, not in. I wouldn't go in there. I wouldn't want anything to do with that. Bad things happen in there. I'm not going to be found dead in there. That's chapter 13, verse 12. Now flip your Bible over one page or click it one over. Let me show you 14:12. One chapter later, there was a battle that took place. Abraham, just to sum this up, because again, for sake of time, Lot chose the wrong side to be on, and his side lost, and they got captured, and Abram's got to come rescue him, and so he does. But this is what it says in Genesis 14:12. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, all that stuff that he had acquired, got captured, since he was living near Sodom. Is that what it says? They're not living near Sodom. Now he's living in Sodom. What does that mean? He moved. That which was one point incredibly uncomfortable. That had nothing to do with that. I know what's going on there. No, now he's inside Sodom. Okay? And then if you go to Genesis 19. Now here on this chapter, I just got to give you a trigger warning. I know this sounds really funny to say this, but what's going to happen in Genesis 19 is, it's I don't know how, it's just going to hit you in the face. If you need to get up and walk out because of something I'm about to say, please know I certainly don't mean to offend anybody. But what happens here is pretty strong. All right, I just got to advance, clue you in. But let me explain what happens. Okay, so in Genesis 13, he pitched his sins near Sodom. In Genesis 14, he lived in Sodom. Let me show you the first verse of Genesis 19 to kind of set everything up. All right. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. Now, let me explain that little phrase, in the gateway. It means he was a city official. It means he represented the city. It meant he was on the greeting committee. He was the welcoming wagon of the city of Sodom. Now, these two angels that showed up, we meet those in chapter 18, the chapter before, and God basically reveals to Abraham, I'm sending these two angels down. They're going to destroy these two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because of what's going on in there. And Abraham's going, my nephew's there, and they have a conversation. You can read about that in Genesis 18. But basically, the angels say, we'll try our best to get Lot out of there and his family, okay? So they go in, and they're greeted at the gate, and here's what happens. Lot's going, please, totally oblivious to what's actually happening. Please come stay at my house. Let me, Middle Eastern hospitality, be my guest. I can't let you you can't just sleep out here. Come to my house and have dinner and stay the night. And so they don't want to because they're on a mission to destroy the city, get him out. But they decide, okay, let's go. We'll stay the night. Now let me read to you what happens next, okay? Genesis 19:4 says, before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house, Lot's house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. And this is what when you picture Sodom and Gomorrah, you understand this. So they're like going, hey, we got some guests. We would like to, you get it. All right. Let's go down a little farther. Genesis 19:6. So what's Lot going to do? These guys are in his house, and they're knocking on the door, and they're surrounded. He can see them through the windows. And young and old, everybody's around the house trying to get to these two guys. And they don't know they're angels. There's two new guys in town. And so Lot's got to come up with a solution. Let me explain to you what happens here. Genesis 19:6. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. He knew exactly what they were up to. He knew exactly what was going on. He understood the culture. Look, he comes up with a solution. I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do whatever you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Now, you just got to sit on that for a minute. I got two guests in my house. You cannot do what you're thinking about doing with them. So here, let me make a deal. Let me come up with a compromise. How about I'll go get my two virgin daughters, and I'll give them to you. Whatever you want to do, however you want to use them, abuse them, rape them, do whatever you want. Do that to them, but don't do what you're thinking about with these men. Because I've vowed to protect these two men. Now, let me just ask you guys, how warped do you have to be that that's a solution? How messed up? Can you imagine these daughters listening to their dad going, Dad? Like, are you crazy? And just how bad it was, they're not interested in the women. And you can keep reading, you can find that out. Now, that's just messed up. Get out of our way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. Now, there's so much in there. But Lot, man, what are you thinking? And he's playing the judge. He used to just live near here. Now he's one of us, and now he thinks he's better than us. And he's passing judgment on us. Wow. Now, I need to explain something. You're going to drop, Lot's going to drop out of the story here, and there's more to the story that I'm going to go into. You want to know how bad it gets? Not only had this city corrupted Lot, it corrupted his daughters, because what happens at the end of that chapter is worse than anything I think I've just described, just so you know. And it's his daughters that instigated it. It's just a messed up situation. The question is, what happens to people who are trying to be good, trying to live good lives, trying to honor God, who are finding themselves immersed in a culture that's so contrary to God? What happens? And that's what you got going on here. And by the way, something else I want to show you interesting. Jesus was talking about the end of times. What's it going to be like? And this is something Jesus said. It was the same in the days of Lot. People were eating, drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. What's Jesus saying? He's going, hey man, it's just going to be just like it was in the days of Lot. You're just hanging out, living there, doing your thing, oblivious to what's actually happening, oblivious to how the environment is changing you. That's what it's going to be like. Why does any of this matter? Let me go back to Romans 12:2. Let me read this to you from a different translation. I already read it once. I read it from the New International Version. Now let me read it from a different translation, the Message. Romans 12:2. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings out the best of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. He transforms you into something better. That's the walk with God path. You end up better. Now, is it easy? No, He never said it was easy. But here's what I need you to understand. Every one of us, every single day we live, we're dealing with a world that is flirting with us. It's flirting with me, and it's flirting with you. And it's trying its hardest to seduce you into its way of thinking. And I'll tell you what, and I'm going to say something, this is going to be shocking if you understand what I'm saying, okay? I don't think there's any more insidious way that the world is flirting with us and trying to seduce us than when it comes to how we see money. Now you go, oh, are you kidding me? No, I think what it's doing is trying to warp it's trying to pervert us into, sexual beings that are different than God wanted us to be. I go, yeah, it is. But you know what? Most of us can see that one happening. You know what we don't see is how we have become so much like the world when it comes to managing and thinking about money. He's just slid that right in there. Satan has just slid that. We just bought it. We didn't even see it. We don't understand how far our thinking is from the way God wants us to think about money. That's why it's insidious. Because we believe, and listen, I'm going to say this very strongly. I'm doing this on purpose. Most of us believe that we can do money any way we want, and it will have no effect on our relationship with God, and we're dead wrong. We are dead wrong. But we think we're right. We think, I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to honor God when it comes to this, and everything's going to be perfectly fine. It won't. But we've convinced ourselves it will. And how do I know it? Because Jesus said you have to make a choice. Let me show you what He said. And this is Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot love both God and money. I can, because I do. No. One of those is your God. One of them is not. If money is your God, God is not your God. You're big G, little g, all right? And I'll tell you what, you fall in love with money, listen to me. Listen to the elderly person in the room. You fall in love with money, you're going to lose your heart for God. It's going to slip away from you. And that's why we get so upset when we talk. It's still a mystery to me. Why do we get so upset when the church talks about this? Because it's got such a grip on us, we don't even understand ourselves. We don't understand how it's an affront to our values. I just need you to understand it's an affront to your values because you've changed. Now, the world is saying to us, loving money is good, greed is good. God comes along and says, no. Loving money is dangerous, deadly. Greed is idolatry. You've made a God out of something that is no God. That's why God takes this stuff so seriously. That's why it's mentioned so many times in the Bible, because we don't see what it's doing to us. And the world values wealth above everything, and many of us have been shaped by this world, and we have never given it a second thought. So, you're on a journey. Your life's going somewhere. You're going to end up somewhere. You're going to become someone. Not who you are today, but yeah. And then you're going to leave behind the record of your life, the difference your life made. We started this journey with Abraham, kind of traveling with him. God said, if you'll follow me, if you'll trust me, I'm going to do something in your life that literally you're going to have a very hard time believing, and it's going to sound ridiculous and absurd, and yet Abraham trusted him, and then he was ridiculously blessed by God. And then God comes along to you and to me, and he says, I'm going to tell you something. I want to take you on a journey, and where I want to take you is what I want to do in your life, I want to take you to a destination, and I promise if you'll follow me, you'll get there, and I'll bless you. And we just go, no, it would require too much, and we don't take the path that Abraham was willing to take. So we've been talking about that. We've got to trust him. We've got to trust he can sustain us. We have to trust that his way is not insane. That's a better way. So we're in the series, All In Together. And let me say it again. I don't know how to say this more clearly. My goal is to get every single one of you in the game. That's my goal. 100% of you in this game. Get off your butt from the bleachers and get into the game. Because we're all going to sit around and watch Kansas City get annihilated today by San Francisco, and we're just going to gain a bunch of weight because we just ate. We didn't exercise. And the tendency is to do exactly the same thing when it comes to faith, just to sit and watch people who are on the field trying to make something happen. I'm just telling you, man, I need you on the field. I want to invite you to where the action is. This is where you want to be, not sitting on your duff. Get on the field. And it's hard. So all in together, all in. And I just want to tell you something. No matter where you are on this journey, and everyone's somewhere on this journey, see, some of you, in fact, let me tell you, a journey, the 1,000 miles begins with first step. It always does. Some of you, and I've told you this, and it's not unique to Central, by the way, most people who go to church do not contribute anything to the ministry of the church they attend. That's a nationwide reality. And I'm telling you guys, it's not good enough. We're better than that. We're capable of more than that. And that's why, again, I'm not letting up. And so this 100% thing, it matters to me. I want you in the game. You go, there's no way. You've been talking about giving a tenth. There ain't a prayer I'm giving a tenth. I couldn't give a tenth if I tried. I don't have it. I got it. Okay. How about this for a first step? How about, and in your, they're going to put this up. In your booklet, there is this graph right here. These are steps to take to become a different kind of person. Okay? When this is how to become the kind of person that God tried to get you to become, but we fought him all the way. And because we're afraid of the destination, and God's going, oh, you don't understand the destination. You get to this destination, you're going to have a vista. You can see stuff nobody else can see. But most people won't take the first step. You know what the first step is? And it shows you, let's just become an initial giver. What does that mean? It means if you've never given, give something. Get on the field. Give something. If you can release something out of your hand, something's going to start to change inside of you. Release something. You go, well, I don't have anything big enough to give. When I was a high school student, I went to I've shared this before, and I'll never forget this till the day I die. I was not a Christian. I was not a Christ follower, but I went to a Methodist church in Scottsdale when I was a high school kid before I came to faith, and the preacher got up on a Christmas Eve service and he said something that, just like Jim said, it's something I said smacked him across. This guy said something smacked me across the face. This is what he said. He said, you know what? We're all ready for Christmas. It's tomorrow. And we've all gone shopping and we've got everybody, everything, and it's time's run out. And then he said this statement. He says, you know who we forgot? We forgot the person of honor. We forgot Jesus. We got gifts for everybody. It's not everybody else's birthday. It's Jesus. Did you have anything for him? Did you have I'm sitting there going, I don't even know Jesus, but I feel bad for him. It's his birthday and nobody's got him a gift. So they pass a plate and I go, look, I got to help somehow. I have $2. And when I was a high school kid, $2 was a lot of money. And I put my $2 in that plate. I've never forgot. I had no idea that was the beginning of a transformed life. No idea. But I'll tell you what, for my journey, began that Christmas Eve. You give something, see what happens. Just give something. Well, that's step one. Step two is becoming a consistent giver. What does that mean? It means like for the first time, maybe for the first time, you give $10. How about you become, just take this a step farther, become consistent. What do I mean? Become consistent. How about you say, I can't tithe. That's a tenth. This is way too much. How about you give $10 a week? You give $10 a week. If you're a high school kid, hey, how about you give $2 a week? I'm going to give $2. I'm going to give $1. Whatever. You decide something. But here's the deal. Don't do it just once. Go, I'm going to do this and then put some time for it. Just do it. Just do it. Take a step. See what happens. I'm going to do this for 4 weeks. I'm going to do this for 8 weeks. I'm going to do this for 6 months, a year. I'm going to do this for 1 year. Consistently do that. You do that and you see what starts to change inside of you. Here's the third one. Become an intentional giver. That's the third step. What does that mean? It means it's not happen. I've made my mind up. I'm doing this as a pattern. This is not going to, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to move other priorities around so that this one certainly gets honored. That is an intentional giver. Beyond that is a surrendered giver. What does that mean? It means and I'll talk about this next. I'm done with the battle. I'm not going to sit here and debate this anymore. I know that God can be trusted, and it's going to be sacrificial. It's going to be consistent. I'm not going to think twice about that. I'm going to always put God first, and I made my mind up. It's just done. All my money, all my resources, all my time, talent, treasure, it all belongs to God. I surrender. And then the fifth one, the fifth step, is becoming an eternal giver. Let me just explain this, and then I'll wind this message down. What is an eternal giver? An eternal giver is when you start to realize that nothing you have today is going to carry over into heaven. Nothing. No matter how wealthy you've become, no matter how much your portfolio is worth, no matter how great of a return you got on that, no matter how high the S&P goes, and none of it's going with you. And an eternal giver, and by the way, you go, well, I'm leaving all this to my kids. Do some study on what wealth just transferred to kids who didn't earn it does to them, and you might reconsider. An eternal giver starts thinking, you know what, I have these resources, more than I could possibly spend in my lifetime, but you know what I could do? I could invest them in somebody else's eternity. That's what ministry does. That's where you're going, I want to give because I want to see people. That's what, I'm going to set aside X amount of dollars so I can send kids to camp every single summer. I'm going to send kids to camp. Because I believe when kids go to camp, they're going to meet Jesus, they're going to change their life. I'm investing in the future. That is the stage beyond. Now, let me wind this up by saying, and wind it down. Our destination is determined by the direction we travel, not the intention we declare. You can't accidentally become any of these kind of givers. It requires a choice. And again, you got to determine to get there. It's upstream. It's uphill. The world is not going to encourage you. And in fact, the world's going to do everything it can do to convince you that you're wasting your energy. Now, I want to show you this card. This card, we're going to hand you this card next week when you walk in. All right, it's in your book, but we're actually going to hand you a card. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to pray about, okay? And again, unashamedly, I'm going to challenge you to pray about. What are you going to do? What journey are you going on? For the next 2 years, what journey are you going on? Are you just going to roam? Are you just going to just wander? Or do you want to head somewhere? I'm going to head somewhere. And I'm going to explain to you what Lisa and I are going to do for the next 2 years in our lives with what God puts in our hands. It's going to be very consistent with what we've done in the past. It won't be, but I'm just going to tell you what we're going to do. But here's my point. I want you to think about what you're going to do. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do because I've thought about it. I'm going to challenge you to think about what you're going to do. Now, we're going to hand you this card. It's basically, this is what I intend to do over the next 2 years. And it might be give $2 a week, give $10 one time. It might, whatever. I'm going to give $10 a week. I'm going to step this up to a tithe. What do you intend to do? And here's what you've got to understand about this church. We are not trying to squeeze money out of you. We don't do anything to make you feel uncomfortable. Other than we open the Word of God and we expose you to the Word of God, and we'll let that do with it whatever you want. We don't pass satchels. We don't pass plates. If you give in this church, you got to intend to give. The closest I can go to, hey, there's giving boxes on the doors as you exit. And I mean, that's as easy as it gets. But in our church, you want to give, you get online and you make commitments. This is how we do it. We're not trying to guilt you into anything. We're not trying to make you compel you to. But I'm telling you, next week we're going to hand these out. Now, we're not going to collect them next week. We're going to hand them to you, and we're going to ask you to go home and pray about it. If you want to do absolutely nothing, you do absolutely nothing. That's your call. If you want to go somewhere, let's go together. And that's what that's going to be about. So I want to close this message. I want to read the last words of a poem you're very familiar with, a poem that many people don't actually know the name of it. We think of this as the Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost. It's not The Road Less Traveled. It's called The Road Not Taken. That's the name of the actual poem. And it's the story that he wrote. He said, I came upon a yellow wood, and there was one path that went this way, and one road went here, and one road went there, and I was at a fork in the road. I didn't know which way to go. I looked over here, and it looked like this was well traveled. A lot of people had gone to that. And this one over here, not very many people. And so I stood there, and I had to make a choice. Do I go where everybody else has gone, or do I go where I believe maybe not many people have ever been experienced? And the last words of that poem are these words: 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. You know why I am so passionate about this? Because I have taken the road less traveled when it comes to this. And where it's led my family is to a vista that I never even imagined existed. And you know what? I want it for you. I want you to see what I see. I want you to experience what I've experienced. And if it makes you uncomfortable for me to talk about it, I'm okay with that. I don't want anything from you. I want something for you. I want you to see something that the world will never show you because you can't get there. And by the way, your destination is not determined by your intention. It's by your direction, which way you're going to go. So I'm going to ask you to stand. I'm going to close out the service. We're going to stand here wherever you are. Hey, if you're in your house, stand up right now. We're watching you. Okay. Hey, thank you all for being here. Those of you who are in the house with me and those of you who are there and there. Man, it's seriously good to be with you. And I just pray that you'll wrestle with this. And I hope you can see something you've maybe never seen before. So let me pray and we'll be done. God, thanks for this morning. Thanks for the opportunity to worship, to celebrate, to trust you, to be challenged. God, thanks for your word. Thanks for examples like Lot that cause us to ponder, like, is this really what I want? And God, it's so easy to just go along with the world. It's so easy to buy into the values of the world. It flirts with us and it seduces us, and many of us have been taken in, and we don't even understand what we did. So God, wake us up, slap us around, do whatever you got to do to get our attention, to see something. And Lord, I do pray that you make us uncomfortable about this, if we need to be made uncomfortable about this. But God, that we would trust you in the end, and we would literally put our life on the line for you as you put your life on the line for us. And I pray for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys for being here. We will see you next week.